Hey, tervetuloa. Welcome to another episode of History Unwind, the show that blends fact, fun, and a few too many dad jokes to make history, well, less boring. I'm your guide, George, globetrotter and history nerd, here to take you on a wild ride through one of the longest and, let's face it, slightly awkward relationships in Northern Europe. Yes, my friends, we're talking about Finland and Sweden. Think of it like a 600-year-long roomy situation where one side was always low-key, judging the other's taste in music and, well, language. But first, let's crank up some crusade theme music to set the mood. Alright, let's rewind back to the 13th century. Finland is doing its own thing, hanging out in the woods, speaking Finnish, worshipping nature, and fishing a lot. And then Sweden walks in and says, "Hey, cool forest, but wouldn't these be better if we added, a little Catholicism and some fancy Swedish taxes?" So, how did Finland get into this situation? Well, here's where it gets a little murky. The historians are still in a lähtöpiste, a bit of starting point debate over when Sweden really started ruling Finland. But we do know that around the 13th century, after the so-called Northern Crusades, the Swedes made themselves quite at home. Imagine someone crashing at your place after the road trip and then never leaving.
Välkommen!
Now, to make themselves feel even more welcome, the Swedes start settling along the Finnish coast, bringing their language, their customs, and a whole lot of bureaucracy. Oh, and did I mention they also brought taxes? Taxes, everyone's favorite. So imagine you are a Finnish farmer, happily minding your own crops when suddenly a Swedish tax collector shows up. And then, "Hey, it's tax time." "But I already gave you half." "Yeah, well, Stockholm wants the other half." And what do Finns get in return? Not much. But hey, at least they were considered equal to the Swedes in terms of legal rights. In theory, at least. But speaking Finnish to the Swedish authorities was about as helpful as asking a fish to do your taxes. Speaking of language, if you think Finnish is hard today, just imagine trying to explain yourself to a Swedish nobleman in 1345. Spoiler alert, it didn't go well. You see, Swedish was the official language of government, so any Finn trying to communicate in their own tongue was treated like that person at the party who keeps talking about a real niche hobby no one else gets. The Swedes. So, what are you saying? "Well, I'm just asked if I can keep fishing here." Yeah, no, that's Swedish land now. Also, your language, kind of primitive. Cool. Finns had rights, but also a bit of an image problem. According to some Swedes, they were like the awkward cousins you had to invite to the family reunion, but never really wanted to sit next to. Now, if you thought things couldn't get worse, let's throw some wars into the mix. Finland became the eastern frontier of the Swedish realm, which meant that every time Sweden and Russia had a spat, guess was caught in the middle? Yep, Finland. Between raids, plundering, and border conflicts, life in Finland was, let's say, eventful. They were practically Sweden's human shield. It's like being in the front row of a mosh pit at a metal concert. Exciting, sure, but also dangerous. And unlike Sweden, Finland didn't exactly get a front row seat to the glory days of the Swedish Empire. They were more like the roadies that made it all happen, but nobody really mentioned them in the credits. Fast forward to 1809, the Treaty of Hamina. Imagine this: the Swedes and Russians sit down to hash things out, and the Swedes are like, fine, you take Finland, we're done. And just like that, after hundreds of years of shared rule, wars, and awkward family reunions, Finland became part of the Russian Empire. It was a bit like watching your childhood best friend move away to a new town. Sure, you're happy for them, but also, yikes. So, what's the takeaway from Finland's centuries under Swedish rule? Well, Finland gained access to Western European culture, became part of the market economy, and adopted many Western legalistic principles. Plus, they picked up a few hundred Swedish words along the way. Sure, it wasn't all huva paiva and sunshine. There were plenty of bumps along the road, but in the end, Finland emerged with a unique identity that's still evident today. Just don't bring up taxes or crusades at your next dinner party with a Finn. Trust me. That's it for today's episode of History Unwind. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and as always, if you got any fun historical tidbits, send them our way. Until next time, hey pa and adieu.